Welcome to the newest episode of the J-Karp Show. First, we're going to talk about David Stern finding San Antonio Spurs. Earlier this week, Spurs coach Greg Popovich decided that with the final game of a 6-game road trip, he decided to bench 4 of his stars. Those 4 stars being Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and Danny Green. Now, in most cases, everybody besides Spur fans were happy with the decision, Best for the team. And Coach Popovich stated it was so they could be fresh when they faced the Memphis Grizzlies. Well, David Stern thought that it was a disservice. It was, quote, a disservice to the league and our fans. And in doing that, David Stern fined the San Antonio Spurs $250,000. A pretty high penalty, honestly. And I think it's a stupid one. Personally, I believe it doesn't matter. It's the coach's decision. It's a coach's team. He can make whatever decisions he believes that are best for the team's interest. And I think resting your players to play the best team in the league, which in this case would be the Grizzlies, is a very smart decision for the Greg Popovich and the San Antonio Spurs. I think it was a good decision, but I think what David Stern did was pathetic. Just finding them just to try and act like an assertive commissioner. And David Stern is going to be done a couple years too. And he's actually one of the more respected commissioners in pro sports. Possibly because the NHL, well, don't get me started on that. That lockout's probably never going to end. And then you got Roger Goodell, who is Roger Goodell. And Bud Selig doesn't even do much. But David Stern, it really shocked a lot of people. 81% of a poll on Sports Nation said that they should not have been fined that much or punished. Now, another issue. Well, before we get to the final issue of the show, I'm going to get to you about Week 13 in the NFL. Week 12 featured a lot of amazing games, whether it be the Browns forcing 8 turnovers to beat the Steelers, or the Giants thrashing the heavily favored Green Bay Packers. This week, the Rams from St. Louis actually have a chance to break not only the tie that they faced against the Niners earlier this year, but also the tie in the career series, as in franchise history they are 61-61-2 against the 49ers. So one team's going to be ahead in the total series when this game's over. You also have the Browns and the Raiders with Rondo McClain running out of Oakland, who's been suspended by the team for about a couple weeks. He's posted Facebook statuses saying that he wants out of Oakland. He's tired of it. And honestly, when you think about it, though, the Oakland Raiders have always been like the rebellious team of the NFL. They've always said what they want, done what they want, and that's what makes them who they are. And that's what I think a lot of people watch and like them for, because they don't take crap as easily as most teams do. Also, Colin Kaepernick for the 49ers will be starting this week over Alex Smith. Not because Smith's hurt or anything, but because Colin Kaepernick's actually good. He put up 2 straight solid performances. Well, you could say 3 straight, but I'd just go with 2. And so, the coach, Jim Harbaugh, finally decided it's time to give him a chance. So now he'll be starting against the Rams. Michael Vick could very well be out for the rest of the year. Deshaun Jackson's already out for the rest of the year. Hurt himself on last Sunday. He had 1 reception for 9 yards. Last Monday, and a 30-22 loss to the Panthers. The Eagles have the worst record in the NFC. Now, personally, I believe the Philadelphia Eagles are the definition of a big-name team. They have a bunch of big names. Mike Vick, Nnamdi Asomugha, Deshaun Jackson. But that's it. Just names. Not enough to produce wins. They're just big names with high salaries. And that are not keys to success. You need to have a good... Big names obviously would help. But big names that produce are even more better. And even lesser-known guys that produce. I mean, there's just too much going on in the Eagles right now. The offensive line coach is going to retire at the end of this season. I mean, there's just so much going on in Philadelphia right now. It's unbelievable. But Nick Foles will remain the starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. Next comes, well, the SEC Championship, believe it or not. It just ended, and Alabama has defeated Georgia 32-28. Georgia had the ball, and they were driving down at least to the 10-yard line of Alabama. However, with the clock running, Murray threw one pass, and it was a completion. However, it wasn't out of bounds. It was too far away for them to get the ball back and stop the clock. So the game ended there. But Georgia did catch a break in that drive when a potential interception was ruled incomplete on the challenge. But Eddie Lacy is the SEC MVP. The Crimson Tide rushed for over 353 rushing yards in that game on about 55 carries in that range. And they will be facing former unranked last year, Notre Dame in the national championship. But they got a while for that. But congratulations to Nick Saban in Alabama. I mean, this is Nick Saban's 4th SEC championship, and it's a pretty tough division. It's probably the toughest in college football. But they did it again. Personally, though, I believe Notre Dame will win that game. When the time comes, I'll still talk more deep about that game. But yeah, so it's official. BCS title game. Alabama versus Notre Dame. Okay. Now this is the final topic I wanted to talk about. And this is going to have a lot of info, a lot of sadness, and reporting. This morning, Chiefs linebacker, 4-year pro Javon Belcher, shot his girlfriend at their home during an argument. Shot her multiple times. He then drove to Arrowhead Stadium, the stadium of the Chiefs, and committed suicide in front of his coach and GM. 2 of his coaches. One of them including Romeo Crennel, as well as Scott Pioli, the GM. And most people would assume this is concussion related. But I did my extensive research, because that's what I do. I want to make sure you get the most accurate info. He never had serious medical issues. He was on the injury report for a couple days in 2009 for a head injury. However, 4 days later against the Raiders, he played. But most players who commit suicide or die early, it was concussion-related, injury-related, like Junior Seau. Everybody believes it was concussion-related trauma. There's a player, I believe, on the 86 Bengals who died a while back with that same incident. Leo Durson, who killed himself and wished that his brain be examined, so he shot himself in the heart. But this was a big surprise because nobody expected him. They do not have a possible motive. Police don't have one, but they said that him and his girlfriend were arguing a lot recently. And it's sad because both people had an infant child. This situation is basically Steve McNair reversed. His girlfriend killed Steve McNair in 2009, and then she killed herself in their Nashville apartment. And it was quite sad. But nobody expected this to come. Apparently, according to the police report, Belcher was holding a gun to his head, thanking all the coaches and everything. And then all of a sudden, bam, shot himself. And the Chiefs chairman, Clark Hutton, said in a statement, quote, "The entire Chiefs family is deeply saddened by today's events. Our collective hearts are heavy with sympathy, thoughts, and prayers for this family and friends affected by this unthinkable tragedy," unquote. One thing that I'm afraid of, well, first off, I like to say, I think the real victim here was the kid. The infant child he was about 2-3 months old. The infant child who is now left with no parents. I mean, he's obviously going to be his relatives, but we just hope for the best for that infant. But one thing that's sad, this kind of brings me back to Chris Benoit. Now, for those of you that don't know who Chris Benoit is, he was a professional wrestler that in 2007 killed him over the course of a weekend, killed his wife, one of his sons, who was about 7 years old, and then he hung himself in his own weight room. Now, after his death was found, after they found his body, WWE World Wrestling Entertainment, released, they had a tribute show on Monday Night Raw, their flagship program, which they do for most wrestlers who were big names that died, such as Owen Hart and Eddie Guerrero. However, 24 hours later on their sci-fi show, ECW, more details of the issue, when they found out it was more of a murder-suicide, they found out, became more apparent, Vince McMahon decided not to do a tribute this time. They said they would not be mentioning Mr. Benoit in the program that night. And since that day, you say Chris Benoit in WWE, I don't even know how to describe it. It's basically like Chris Benoit never existed. I'm not going to get fined by saying his name about 3 times, and I'm not going to stop saying it. Because the man was there. He was alive. He's a person. He won titles. He was a praised wrestler. Very high up in the business. He was expected to win a title the night he killed himself. And it's so sad because obviously I'm not going to think of him as a hero because of what he did. I don't condone what he did at all. I think it was horrible. It was just indescribable. It was tragic. Just same with Javon Belcher. But what I hope is that the Kansas City Chiefs don't do to Javon Belcher as what WWE did to Chris Benoit, and that's ostracize him, isolate him, completely erase any existence this person had. Because you have not heard anything about Chris Benoit on WWE programming since the day after he was found dead. You haven't. There have been a couple times they mentioned Eddie Guerrero during segments. These were just storyline segments. But you don't hear about Chris Benoit. The only time you do is when somebody just releases private interviews or tweets about it. But it's a shame because he was such a great wrestler. But the key I want to get at is that Chris Benoit had his autopsy showed that his brain, because he did a move known as the diving headbutt. He would jump from the top rope and he would headbutt his opponent. His brain was the same equivalent, according to the doctors, as an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient. 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient. Now, obviously, when something like that happens, with all the chair shots he would take and punishment, obviously, it will lead to traumatic issues like this. So while people don't condone Chris Benoit for doing what he did, it's not like it was just a spur on the moment where he was waking up one morning, I'm going to kill my wife and kid. No. What it was his brain so delusional, so damaged, that's like it wasn't even functioning right anymore. And he lost it and, killed his family. And it's a shame. And we all missed those 3. But with Javon Belcher, he had no brain issue as of now. More details will become emerging in the coming weeks, and I'll be updating on that on my Facebook page, J-Karp NFL Updates. But it wasn't. He even was quoted a few days ago saying that he was thankful for his family, that he wishes his daughter the best, he loves her very much. And all of a sudden, bam, right in front of his teammates, he kills himself. So it makes you wonder, was there something demonic going inside of him? And I'm not saying he was possessed by anything. What I'm saying is, was there something that was so tragic, traumatic, inside of Javon Belcher that he had to kill his girlfriend and kill himself in the heat of an argument? And it's just a shame what happened. I would like to express my condolences to the Belcher family, to the Chiefs, and everybody in the organization, especially the people that witnessed him shooting himself. But it's just you wonder what exactly led to this. But whatever it is, I will never condone an act such as not only murder, but suicide. That concludes this episode of the J-Karp Show. I'll catch y'all later. You can like me on Facebook on the J-Karp Show or on J-Karp's NFL Updates. Thank you all, and good night.